Hey Internet, Mark here with CarAudioFabrication. One of the things that I get a lot of messages about, and I think a lot of people get hung up on, is how exactly to actually start a build. There's obviously infinite options for where you can mount amplifiers, for where you can mount subwoofers, and you want to make the right choice. I'm actually in this phase of Project Jeep build right now where I need to determine where to locate all the equipment. So I wanted to take you guys along on the journey. In this video, I'm going to walk you through my process of picking where we want to mount the subwoofer, where we want to mount the amplifiers, and I'm going to give you guys some tips along the way. Let's get started. Alright guys, so one of the most important things that you want to consider right from the beginning of your build is design intent. What I mean by design intent is, what do you want this system to accomplish? Now of course everyone's going to say, I want it to be loud, or I want it to sound good. Those are obviously things that you're going to want the system to do. But I'm thinking more along the lines of, do we want to retain cargo space, or do we not care about the cargo space? Do we want the system to be flashy and unique? Or do we want it to be a stealth build that no one will ever really see? It's really important that you consider these things before you get started, because it will give you more of a guideline of how you should get started. So in this case, let's talk about Project Jeep build. Now one of the first things I want to do here is I just want to show you guys, if you're unfamiliar with the Jeep, how this all works. So the Jeep Wrangler has this little storage tub. Now in the case for my install, I know that I don't really care about this storage tub. I've already talked about it with the driver. They don't use this, they don't care about it. So I know that I can use this for an amplifier rack. Now what's gonna actually make this video unique is I'm kind of figuring this out right now, live with you guys. I haven't really given this much thought yet, so I'm gonna kind of walk you through my exact process for what I'm thinking. Now what's gonna be kind of unique about this install is I want it to be flashy. I wanna show off these amplifiers. I wanna show off the subwoofer, but I also want it to be stealth. Now you're probably thinking, how in the world are you gonna do that? Well, what I've kind of been thinking of is, what I wanna do is a cool amp rack with the amplifiers, and then I want to have like a nice cover panel so you can see just this part of the amplifier. You won't see any of the wiring. Now I also know that I want to use this subwoofer and I want to mount it right here down firing. The idea behind the subwoofer box is it's going to have a plexiglass panel on the top so that you can see into the subwoofer. The idea behind the subwoofer box is it will actually flip up, much like this OEM cover panel did. So I've got the flashy part covered. I'm gonna have this cool amp rack where when you flip this up, the sub will be sitting right here. You can see the amplifiers. Everything will be vinyl wrapped. I'll throw in some intricate design. When the subwoofer box is down, you'll be able to see into that plexiglass panel. I'll probably do some lighting. So that's all of our flashy part of the build. Now how can we make it stealth? Well, the subwoofer is in fact gonna be down firing, so you're not gonna see it normally. And what I'm thinking about doing is that plexiglass part that you can see inside of the subwoofer box, I can easily just make an insert that sits into that, that's just carpeted. And I could have a little pull tab on it. So when you're riding around normal, it just looks like a continuation of the carpet. So let's start thinking a little bit more detail oriented. Let's start with the amplifiers. I know that I want my amplifiers in here, and I know that I'm gonna need some wiring distribution, and I'm pretty sure I'm also gonna be installing a digital signal processor as part of this build. So what I'm thinking is I can have the amplifiers sit up a little bit like this. I can build some kind of support structure underneath them, and I can have the DSP down underneath the amplifiers. That'll also give me some room for some wire distribution. This is something that's important to consider. I think a lot of people will mount their amplifiers and then they go to run the wires and they realize, oops, I don't have a whole lot of room for the wires. Now something else I want to point out is that it's in your best interest to check out all the dimensions of your gear before you purchase it. For example, on these amplifiers, I was able to easily look up all the dimensions. The same goes for the subwoofer. Most car audio companies will provide these dimensions. Then obviously all it's a matter of doing is taking out a tape measure and just measuring and making sure that you actually have room for those things. So let's get back to the amplifiers here. So if you guys follow me on Instagram at CarAudioFab or Facebook at facebook.com/CarAudioFabrication, you may have seen my post where I was asking you guys what layout you thought was best. I have several different options. There's an option like this, keeping in mind I need extra room for the DSP and for the wire distribution, like this. And finally, there was an option like this. So I'm actually curious, what do you guys think? Because I'm not sure yet. What layout do you think I should pick? Drop me a comment down below. Okay, so by the looks of it, it looks like I'll have plenty of room for the amplifiers like we talked about. Wiring, just as a general guideline, I would say give yourself at least 2 to 3 inches, definitely on the ends where the wiring goes in, and then always consider along the sides as well, because you want the wiring to either run alongside. Now if I'm floating these amplifiers, obviously I can go underneath, which is another option you can always consider. Now another final thing to consider about the amplifiers, and I'll get to that in a second, is how exactly the wiring gets to this from both the front source unit and from the battery for power. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to put this back in. Just pretend that this is the amp rack cover with the cutouts for the amplifiers. Next thing we know we want to do is build our subwoofer box. So the subwoofer will be mounted down firing. I'll actually have some space. It'll be up a little bit like so. I know that vertically we have more than enough room, but again, design intent, I want this to be as low profile as possible. I probably wouldn't go more than, I don't know, 6, 7 inches. Something like that. But we know the subwoofer in this location should be perfect. Something to always check. Let's make sure when we close this door here, if I'm in that location, just so I'm aware, oh, I got plenty of room. All right, so next, something to consider. How am I going to mount this subwoofer enclosure that's going to be floating up above here? Well, conveniently enough, in the Jeep, I have luggage tie downs that can be utilized. I know the Jeep is in a category of its own, but this is one of the nice things about SUV style vehicles is they have these luggage tie downs that you can use for mounting amp racks, for mounting subwoofer boxes. So here's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm gonna have the subwoofer box right here, right? It'll probably extend over this plastic a little bit just so I don't have to worry about this weird transition gap. And then I can tie into these. These will be removed, but I can use this same bolt here to actually physically mount the subwoofer box to the vehicle. There's something else to consider though that I'm noticing right now. This seat will obviously be right here, and it looks like we have room for our mounting location still at the seat, but remember earlier I was talking about running the wiring out of the amplifier rack? Something I was thinking about doing is back here, where the hinges for the subwoofer box would be back here, right? And then I was gonna make like a little tunnel. It wouldn't really look like a tunnel from above, but underneath it would obviously be a tunnel for the wiring to come out through here, and then it can transition under these carpet gaps. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, but as you can see, it's definitely a close little squeeze here. So that's something I'm definitely gonna have to consider and really measure a lot once I start building the subwoofer box. Now something else that's probably worth noting is this line that exists here. This is probably would be something good to kind of match as it kind of copies the factory flow of the vehicle. So if I am going for more of a stealth look when we do have that insert panel that covers up the plexiglass where you can see into the subwoofer, if I have that more OEM looking design, it's going to be a little bit more stealth. Now I didn't mention this earlier either. Something else I want to consider is I want to be able to, obviously I can flip the seat up with no tools. I want to be able to flip this up with no tools as well, because inside here, you can see there's the logo for it. That's where the spare tire jack is located. So another consideration to make is when that subwoofer box folds up like this, I'm gonna need some kind of way of retaining it. I'll have to figure that out. Maybe it will be okay just leaning against this seat, but if so, I'll have to make sure where the box contacts the seat that it's carpeted or something in that location, because otherwise the vinyl resting on this, it would mess the vinyl up. So that's what I think are some of the important design considerations behind this Jeep build. If you guys have any input or anything you'd like to add, I'd love to hear it, so leave me a comment down below. I want to say a special thanks to Rockford Fosgate for supplying all the gear for this build. If you guys would like to see the gear that I'm planning on installing, you can check that video out. It's part of the first video of a video playlist that will talk about this whole build. As always, a special thanks goes out to Brian, Eddie, Ali, EJ, Rory, Nathan, Emmanuel, Jerry, and the rest of the Patreon supporters. These guys are part of the CarAudioFabrication Patreon support team, and they make small donations per video, which helps me to cover the monthly cost of creating this content. Also, thank you for watching this video. I appreciate your input. Be sure to leave me a comment down below and slam that like button. Thank you again for watching.